TK in the universe, and I am back again with another video. And today I'm here to talk about Quest 64. My gosh, Quest 64. I have an interesting history with this game. This is a game I actually played when it was new. So in this video, I'm going to go over my personal history with this game. I'm going to talk about some YouTubers who've made some videos that you might perhaps want to check out, and then I'm just going to give my overall thoughts. This isn't a traditional review or retrospective. This is more of a conversation, just me casually talking about Quest 64 and what I liked about it. So here we go. First up, let's talk about the story. My story with this game. Got to get into my storytelling voice here. The tale is old as time. Tale is old as time. It's a story. Let's tell a story about my experience with Quest 64. The year was 1998 or even 1999. I'm not sure exactly because these years just blur together. And I was a young man and I had played The Legend of Zelda OOT, or as we used to call it, Zelda 64, because there was no Majora's Mask in those old days. I'd played that game and loved it. I was looking for more. I was looking for another adventure. And the thing about me is I lived in a little town, a very, very small town in the Midwest of 850 people in a county of 15,000. Yes, this truly was the middle of nowhere. And in this time period, of course, people rented things, from places. They didn't buy everything digitally or rent things digitally. They rented things from places such as those VHS tapes. You could get VHS tapes. I did not have a traditional video rental store like the Blockbuster or the Hollywood Video. We had a local gas station. That's right, folks. There were 2 gas stations in our little town, and they each had VHS rentals and these contraptions called DVDs, digital video discs, and they also had video games. They had video games. You could get, for example, these things called PlayStation games. There was also N64 games. I was someone who had an N64, so naturally I rented N64 games. And I had just rented a game from THQ called WCW NWO Revenge. That's right, the best-selling third-party game on the entire N64. A game that is incredible. So, I ran out. I was playing that, having a good time. And I was down to my last cigarette, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this back. I've had my fun with it and played it. So, I was like, I'm going to take this back here. Maybe I'll get another game, get another pack of smokes, smoking the Marlboro Reds back in those days. And, so I go down to the old gas station. And usually there's some old-timer working there. Some old-timer, or some, guy in his 50s, It wasn't, it's young guys, we don't trust anybody over 30, And anyways, but somebody different was working that day. Somebody different. It was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. A real Jennifer Love Hewitt type of girl, Maybe her name was Kelly or Jenny or something, I don't know. She was just absolutely gorgeous. Go to return my copy of WCW NWO Revenge, and and I was gonna get I asked for a pack of smokes. She's like, you know what? You shouldn't get a pack of smokes. Here, take this instead. And folks, it was a copy of Quest 64. I was like, and she was so beautiful, I just couldn't say no to her. So I was like, if you say so. And basically, I went and I got that game and I rented it and just fell madly in love. But maybe I was just in love with the girl. I don't know. But just the combination of those things was just unbelievable. I knew from that moment that I was like, I'm going to marry that girl. That's right, folks. I'm going to marry that girl. She just saved my life. I could have been smoking for years if I hadn't got Quest 64, if she hadn't told me. So I went to go tell her I loved her. I went to that gas station, folks. And the usual old-timer who was working there. And I was like, hey, where's the girl? He's like, what are you talking about? And then I looked up and I saw a picture I'd never noticed before. And that was the girl. She was in the picture. I'm like, that girl over there. Hasn't she been working here a while? And the old-timer looks up at me and says, man, that girl hasn't worked here in like 5 years. She was killed in a car accident. No, that's not really what happened. That is not how I discovered Quest 64, but that would have been a great story, would it have not? That would have been a fantastic story. So I will tell you guys how my real experience with Quest 64. When I was old enough to play Quest 64, I was not old enough to smoke. I was a smoker for a time, but I actually did quit like 10 years ago, thanks to my wife, actually. That's actually true. Yeah, I was like 13 or 14 years old when I rented Quest 64. I did play it, and I did not like it, honestly. I could not understand how to play this game. Didn't have the manual, and had no idea what I was doing or what was going on with this game. You know, I didn't understand the concepts of leveling up. I had played an RPG. Of course, I'd played Mario RPG, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Future me here, sorry to interrupt past me who's telling you about Quest 64, but I just thought of something while I was editing this video that's kind of funny, and I don't think anybody else has mentioned this. And I'm bringing this up because, of course, as you were seeing, I was talking about Mario RPG, and there's a character in Mario RPG who looks exactly like Maman, the final boss, and that character is Kulex from Mario RPG. These guys look exactly the same. Have you ever noticed that? Because I'm just now noticing that. So I wanted to bring that gee-whiz thing up that I don't think anyone else has ever said. So anyways, back to the video. Coming to this, I was kind of like really confused about how to play this game. I didn't understand a lot of really basic concepts of the game, and I didn't get to play it long enough to actually figure out if I would have actually liked it. I had rented it, you know. I think there really was a girl named Kelly working there. I think that's actually true. I think, yeah, there was a girl named Kelly working there, but she did not look like Jennifer Love Hewitt. But, and I was not madly in love with her or anything. But yeah, that part is actually true. I really did rent it from a gas station. I really did come from a town of like 850 people. That's not a lie, from the Midwest. Now, funny enough, my wife and I did go to a flea market like 8 or 9 years ago. This is no joke. And this is before we were married. And I think I'd used all the cash I had. I came across Quest 64. In fact, it was this exact copy of Quest 64. There was a vendor there, and they wanted $10 for it, and I didn't have $10. So I asked my wife. So my wife did really buy me Quest 64. That's not a lie. That is absolutely the truth. And yeah, I'm just now playing it, 8 or 9 years later or whatever it's been. I'm just finally now playing it. And there's been a lot of inspirations for why I decided to play this. It's not just one thing. It's not just Quest Guy over on Twitter. It's a lot of different things and reasons, that I decided to finally sit down and play this game. Obviously, Quest Guy played a huge role in me finally getting this game. He introduced me to a number of videos too. Like, for example, Treaky Boy had made this video about Quest 64 and is like the most popular Quest 64 video that's been made in the last year or so. And his video was incredible. I mean, it's kind of spoiler heavy, but, honestly, if you haven't watched it in a month, you kind of forget what he told you. But, it's like, and then you realize it as you're playing it. But I still thought it was a really good video. And then I found out the Completionist had made a video about it as well. And I watched his video. His video's a little more lukewarm on it, but still, really good and really honest video. Really liked the Completionist's video of it. It was incredible. And then my buddy Pragmatic had actually made a video quite a while back about it. And what I really liked about Pragmatic's video is that he actually went into more detail about Quest Brian's Journey, which is the Game Boy D-make of it, actually, which has some more added things to it, which make the game far more interesting. So there's also one other Quest game called Quest Fantasy Challenge. I did just get this really recently. Basically, yeah, it's a Dig Dug clone or a Mr. Do clone, and it's pretty simple. I got about 5 levels into it. I think there's like 20 levels total. It was fun for a few minutes, but I'm really looking forward to Brian's Journey, which I actually recently bought. I'm just waiting for it to come in the mail. I don't know if I'll play it right away when I get it. Maybe I'll just, wait, because maybe I'm getting a little burned out on Quest stuff. I'm like burning myself out, so you got to pace yourself a little bit. But again, I am so sorry I keep interrupting my own video, but I actually did finally get Quest Brian's Journey. I did get this game. And it came really quickly, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. It plays really well. And the person who played this before, funny enough, actually had gotten to the very last boss of this game, Maman. So, yeah, looking forward to trying this out. So, okay, I'm sorry. I promise I won't interrupt myself anymore. Back to the video. Yeah, those are the YouTube channels I would recommend checking their videos out. I think with Treaky's video, if you are really dead set on playing this game, perhaps wait to watch that after you've played and beat it. Also, one other thing I want to mention. There's a podcast I listened to. I listened to a podcast from The Well-Read Mage, and he actually had a Quest guy from Twitter on there, and they talked for about 2 hours, and I actually listened to the podcast. I listened to it while I was playing Quest 64, and that actually further, made me feel like, man, this was a great idea to play this game and to revisit it. So yeah, those are the things I would recommend maybe to psych yourself up to play Quest 64 if you're looking for some great videos and a great podcast to listen to learn more about Quest 64. Those are a great starting point if you haven't seen those or listened to that already. So, but anyways, I want to get into my thoughts on Quest 64. So here we go. First up, let's talk about this game. This game has a really unique battle system. So you play as Brian. He's like a magician apprentice. His dad had went on a quest of his own to find the Eltale book, this thing called the Eltale book. Basically, it was stolen from the monastery where they're at. And so he's been gone for a month. So now it's up to Brian, who's like 12 years old, to go save the whole, kingdom of Celtland. He's got 4 different kinds of magic at his disposal. He's got fire, earth, wind, and water. Okay, and me personally, when I played this game, I was leveling up water and earth, and that's what seems to be the most recommended one to do for a first playthrough, and I think that was great. Water is absolutely essential because water gives you healing spells. You need those healing spells. There's healing 1 and healing 2, but you have to have you definitely need at least healing level 1, but having 2 is preferable. Now, some of the great things about the earth spells or whatever is avalanche, hits a lot of enemies at once, but it's kind of wild and inaccurate sometimes, depending on how you use it. And there's a thing called magic barrier. Magic barrier is like the, ultimate god spell. Basically, it makes you impervious to magic for like 3 turns. It's an incredible spell, and you get it at like level 36, something like that. Also, there's a spell called Confusion, which you absolutely need because when you use the Confusion spell, which is also an Earth spell, I think, when the bad guy hits you, it actually increases your magic MP, which you really need, because you do not want to run out of MP. If you don't have any dewdrops, you're going to have a bad time kind of thing. So another interesting aspect of this game is you actually don't buy anything in this game. You don't actually purchase anything at shops. You go to this one place and they give you a wing thing, which lets you like return back to the village if you are somewhere else or whatever, and you want to like warp right back to it. And you can keep picking one up every time you go there. Yeah, the items basically like for healing are bread. There's different kinds of bread in the game, and you can find them in like treasure boxes, or enemies drop them, or sometimes people in the villages will give them to you and stuff, or towns and cities, whatever you want to call them. So those are items. But if you have the right magic leveled up, you could play most of the game without ever using any items whatsoever. So there's a lot of different ways you can play this game. I can totally understand why some people were frustrated with Quest 64, because if you don't know how to play the game, you are going to have a really miserable time. And if you don't know what to level up or even how to fight in battle. For example, in fighting in battle, you have these 4 elements, and it's used through the C button, on your N64 controller. And I think that's a great way of doing it. And the nice thing is you can actually dodge attacks when they're being made. And where you position your character is so important to what type of attacks you're using. So if you're using a long range attack, you have to like step back. And if you're using an up close attack, you have to step forward. And you can actually simply just hit your enemy with the stick. You can actually hit your enemy right in the head with a stick. And I was doing that at the very beginning, but then later on I realized, I really need to develop my magic a lot more and start using more magic spells, because that's what increases, the attack power of your magic, is simply actually using your magic. And when you actually get hit, that increases your defense, actually. And when you run around, that increases your agility and how fast your character goes. I actually really like this aspect of the game, is, it's getting hit, because I was always getting hit regardless, throughout the game. So I've heard a lot of people say that this game is super grind heavy, and it really can be depending on how you choose to play it. One of the interesting aspects of this game is throughout this game are hidden these spirit elements, and they're hidden in plain sight most of the time. They can be found in some part of the field or whatever that you're walking through, or a forest, or a town, just anywhere. They're just all over the place. There's 98 total that you can use to level up each crystal of element or whatever, because basically, yeah, you have these 4 elements, you level them all up. So that's one thing else that's really great about this game, is it really rewards people who want to explore. It rewards people who explore. I've read on some forums and stuff, that basically a lot of people seem to say that you really only need to grind for maybe 2 hours throughout the entire game. And I can see why people would say that, and here's the thing, when you're going to look for those elements, oftentimes you are fighting the enemies and, you're building up your stamina that way. You're building up your character's strengths. So throughout the game, you're just doing it naturally and gradually. The basic gist of this game is, you're looking for the Eltale book and you're looking for your dad. He's missing. And you have to go through all these different places throughout this big country. And you have to find these 4 orbs. There's a earth orb, a fire orb, water orb, wind orb, or whatever. There's all these spiritual orbs or whatever. You have to find these 4 because basically whoever, does get the Eltale book needs these. And it seems like every time you go to a town, some thief has stolen the orb from these respective towns. The first boss I fought, I can't remember what his name is now, but I thought he was really easy, actually. It's interesting. When I watched Triki's video, Triki said he thought that boss was really difficult. I thought it was easy, but maybe I just, kept fighting enemies enough. I don't know. And I wasn't really thinking about how I was grinding or anything. And I had no problem. I beat him first time. Now, I got to the point where I just kept hitting him on the head and beat him, and maybe I just had enough items, built up too. Maybe I just had the right amount of items or whatever at the moment. And then the next guy, what's his name? Zelst. And he was in the next place or whatever. And he killed me the first time. He killed me the first time, but then I beat him the next time on pure strategy. Now, Triki talks about Nepti being really difficult. He is 100% right. Nepti is, holy cow. I think I got beat 3 times before I finally beat Nepti. Nepti is the water character. And yeah, she is tough as nails. Holy cow. That was another one where I was I just kept constantly, running away, defensing up, healing myself, I was using a level 3 rock, I want to say. I don't even think I was using avalanche. I never could get it close enough to use avalanche with her where it would make any kind of effect. That's the thing about the avalanche attack, is it's great against multiple enemies or one really big freaking enemy, like Mammon, who's the final boss of the game. I also understand, playing through this game, there's certain, parts of the game, I feel I can totally understand why somebody just straight up gave up or whatever, because it can get really easy to get turned around, especially if you're not actually fighting these guys, because you can escape from just about any battle. You just walk the other way and escape. Now, when you actually fight the bad guys, the various different monsters and stuff, the thing that's really cool about this game, let's say you're headed towards a certain direction, you're fighting the enemy. Well, guess what? After you defeat the enemy, and you don't push any buttons at all. It actually makes you, spin back to where you were facing before. Because I can understand how it would be really easy to get lost throughout this game. This is one of those games, actually it would pay a lot to, read the instruction booklet. Now, some people have said that the game is really empty. I don't think it's any more empty than Zelda Ocarina of Time or a lot of other N64 games at the time. There are a lot of empty rooms, but I look at it this way. Is every hotel room in an actual hotel filled with people when you walk in? Probably not. Could there have been more characters in each building? Yes, definitely. But I think, again, that's part of the fun of the game is, you never know who's going to be behind the door. And it's really interesting how there's real characters in them. They actually have names and they have, they'll say something. And maybe it's not much, but they'll say something to you that's interesting about themselves or the town or their own life. And yeah, and I don't want to give too much away. I feel like I'm already giving too much away. I feel like there's a lot of other videos that have covered this. Like I said, Triki's video is like a freaking retrospective. But yeah, I understand why people may have not liked this game. I completed this game in 16 and a half hours, something like that. I've heard you can complete this game. Some people say that it's easy to complete this game in 6 hours. I don't know if that's true. 12 hours, I would say, is probably pretty normal, depending on how you play the game. Like, if you know where to go look for all the spirit elements that are scattered throughout, yeah, that would make the game way easier. And depending on what you are leveling up is huge. Like I said, I think earth and water are the ideal ones, but you could do water and maybe wind. Now, here's the thing I've heard from other people is that, wind takes the forever to level up, but then is like super powerful at the end. And I don't know a whole lot about fire. I heard there's some good fire attacks too, but it seems like the go-to ones are water and earth. Absolutely. Overall, what is my opinion about Quest 64? Quest 64, what I really like about it is it makes me feel like a kid again. There's not some super complicated story, because when I was a kid, I didn't care about some super complicated story. I didn't need it to be too deep. I just, wanted to destroy monsters and kill monsters. And that's what this game is. It has this medieval feeling. You're a master magician and you're, killing monsters with powerful magic. It's so freaking cool. It makes me feel like a kid again. And that's what really I enjoyed about it. And that's how I approached it. I didn't approach this as, I need some super deep story, because I knew it wasn't going to be a super deep story, because I'd read and seen enough videos about it to understand what this was about. So I really enjoyed it for what it is. I'm not going to tell you it's a masterpiece. I'm not even going to really tell you it's a hidden gem. It's a very competent game, and you can tell the creators had a grand plan and really great ambitions that they just really couldn't implement. In the Japanese version, Eltale Monsters, they actually made a lot of significant improvements. For example, there's less random encounters and your character gets stronger, and there's a little more detail I've heard at the very end of the game. There's more like scenes, I guess, or something. I don't know. But it's a shame we didn't get that here, because the reason we got this version of the game is it came out to North America, and then later on came to PAL regions as Holy Magic Century, and then later, like a year and a half later, it comes to Japan as Eltale Monsters. And the reason we got this version is because the folks over at Imagineer, who are the developers of this game, and THQ published it, the reason they wanted to get it out so soon is because they wanted to beat Zelda, and I can understand why, but it's a shame they didn't, just keep going, because it would have been such a grand thing, I think. I think it had so much potential. And I can understand, like, back in the day, maybe people being frustrated because there was so much hype around this game and it just didn't live up to it. But it's still a good, fun game. It's not a great game, but it is a good game. It is a game I had a ton of fun with. It doesn't have, there's not a lot of story, but there's a lot of people in the game that you can talk to. I feel like there's more people you can talk to in this game than you could in Zelda. But Zelda has a totally different style, obviously. The last third of the game is a bit of a slog, I'm not going to lie, especially when you get to the desert. It gets a little rough. The character of Fargo, who's like the final boss before you get to the other bosses, I even forgot about Shilf as well. Shilf, yeah. She's in the game, of course, and she's like a sub-boss before you get to the Fargo, who's got the last element that you need before you go to the final boss. I thought Fargo was really easy, but by that time I had the magic barrier, so of course he's going to be really easy. When I fought Nepti, I did not have magic barrier, which is why she was so difficult. But yeah, magic barrier is a great... Yeah, magic barrier, confusion, and heal, and you're good to go in this game. There's no way you're not going to beat this game, okay? As long as you have those, you're fine. It's a fantastic game, and the final boss, of course, is Mammon, who's basically, in the New Testament, of course, was like the son of the devil, or the representation of greed and stuff like that. And basically the story you get is that basically he was locked away, and I don't want to give away any other spoilers if you don't already know, but yeah, he was kind of a pretty tough boss, but not the toughest by any means. I beat him on the first time. Just like Guilty was like a sub-boss right before him. I beat Guilty the first time. I think, I had so much fun with this game. It's got a lot going for it. Again, it's like got some really neat things. Like, for example, that you don't have to buy items. People just give them to you. I think that's great. When I was a kid, I used to get so confused about what item am I supposed to buy? I don't want to waste money. You don't have to think about that in this game, and I think that's a huge strength that not enough people talk about. I think this game is absolutely overhated, no question about it. It does not deserve the hate it gets. There is enjoyment to be found in this game. It's funny too, I've talked to a lot of friends in my age range, like my buddy Super Nintendo, and we've talked about how I'd love to get into a game like Octopath Traveler, but it's like 60 hours long. I'm not going to sit around and play a game for 60 hours, that maybe I'm just not that into. It's like it can be a huge investment to get into. That's another great thing about this game is this game can be played easily in under 20 hours. No question about it. Even a first time, have absolutely no experience, haven't looked up any guides, you can definitely beat this game in 20 hours. No question about it. It's a lot of fun for what it is. I would recommend anyone with an N64 to go grab this game if you see it in the wild or see it somewhere for a great price. If you already have it and you've been thinking, man, maybe I should play this game, try it out. It might really surprise you. It's a game that's got great music. Oh, the music is incredible. Battle sequence is the same everywhere, but it's like you get used to it actually after a while. Yeah, overall, I had a lot of fun with it, and I would play this again at some point for sure. I definitely plan to play Brian's Journey the next time. I've heard Brian's Journey. Some people have said Brian's Journey is even better actually than Quest 64, because this game feels like, I like what my buddy Pragmatic said. He said it feels like, Dragon Warrior or whatever back in the day. It's like they made a Dragon Warrior game in 64-bit, it's just one single guy, just doing things. There's no party members. And I think that's a pretty good comparison, actually, But anyways, this was a fun game to play. It's been a while since I've just really sat down and took my time playing a game like this. Maybe that also is why I got so much enjoyment out of this game, is the way I played it. I was playing this game like 1 hour a night. You just play 1 hour a night, and most of the time I was getting to some type of checkpoint or something like that, between each hour. So I was always like, yep, that's a good time to stop, and I'd come back to it. Keep coming back to it. Now, the very last part of the game, I did play for like 3 hours straight. But most days, it was like 1.5 hours. So maybe that should be the approach to playing this game, is playing it this way. Because I feel like I can kind of see why people would just get really bent out of shape playing this game if you're just like binge playing it. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Quest 64. It's a game that isn't perfect, but is definitely not the worst game of all time. And it's a game I genuinely enjoyed and had a ton of fun with. And if you give it a chance, you might find yourself enjoying it too. Maybe it'll make you feel like a kid again. Anyways, that's all the time I have for today. What are your guys' thoughts? Have you played Quest 64? Comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay awesome in this universe. Thanks. Bye.